We are back at House Education Friday, March 21st, 2025. This is further committee discussion time. As we try to put some bows on some parts of our work to say, okay, this is done for now and move on to the next topic. I think there are a couple of small things that have been brought up that I'd like to go over at some point. But I think we're still on class size minimum discussion. At 3:00, we have the secretary coming in to answer some questions about the $4 million budget ask, and not just like specifics about that, but really how it fits into the long range planning of water report and what ahead. Just for interest sake, this just came out yesterday in the Addison County Independent, and just to sort of talk about the impact of class size minimums. So this is they created a class size minimum policy a few weeks ago in order to address declining enrollment at schools in the district, Ripton being one of them. And they basically put class size minimums at 10 or 11, 10, I think, in the elementary school grades. And so they, that really made the K1 classroom, they weren't even as they did 3. So they have to come up with a way to reassign to another elementary school. But the ripple effect is just kind of interesting. So I'm just going to read a bit of this to you. It's really just to sort of show class size minimum policies in action. The policy allows the superintendent to reassign students in unenrolled classes as a group to a different school. Superintendent has reassigned those 3 children to the Salisbury Community School. Ripton boosters are hopeful the building could still serve children in grades 2 through 5, 6 and up go to the middle school and high school for the next academic year. The grade 2-3 class and the grade 4-5 class are both forecast to have 11 students next year. So right on the edge. So they also put out a kind of a survey for folks. An unspecified number of Ripton households with children in the school's upper grades have said they want their students to attend a different ACSD school next year, based in part on concerns of the school's ongoing instability and or the desire to keep siblings together in one school. District officials declined to share the specific numbers because they're so small that individual kids can be identified. But a couple of the households spoke at a meeting Monday about the torturous decision to do what they believed was best for the educational, social, and emotional well-being of their children, while knowing that their kids' exit from the school could expedite the school's downfall. One woman with a 4th grader at the school and a 4-year-old daughter attending preschool in Middlebury are struggling with what's in front of you because, much like you, ever since we've had kids at Ripton, it's always been wondering if they'd make it all the way through, acknowledging the angst of seeing the 6th grade moving to the middle school and the end of a pre-K program due to low enrollment. We're in a situation where there'll be no kindergarten or 1st grade. So what does that mean for my daughter, who's now in preschool? She asked. She works in Middlebury, where her 2 older children attend school. She praised the school for the way it served her son, but she now believes he might flourish in a bigger classroom setting. I don't want to seem like the mom who just gave up on Ripton School. Another mom with 2 students at the school said if the school stays afloat, her kids would be in these small, like 11 student multi-age classrooms. It's not working for my children. The decision has already been made that we won't be attending Ripton. I have a choice to keep my children together, and why wouldn't I do that? Because the different grades. So there's just some more here, and they happen to mention that that there's bipartisan support for minimum class sizes of 15, which would not only make things tougher for Ripton, but for other elementary schools in the district and statewide. The superintendent noted. Anyway, I really just share all of that with you just to say, whether it's 15 or 16 or whatever, this class size minimums in rural areas can make a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought this yesterday too, so just throw this monkey wrench in the conversation. The difference between grade sizes and class sizes is different, grade bands. It's like you said, you have classes are multi-age classes.
Right.
Or like high school, are they classes or do you mean the freshman class? So there's a nuance between how many kids in a grade and how many kids in a class also.
Except all of the rural schools might, it's one and the same.
Well, not one and the same. A grade band is different than a multi-age classroom.
Oh, yes, I'm just saying,
You're saying-
when they talk about classes
Yeah.
and grades,
Oh, yeah,
since there's only one of each. it's
Right.
saying that.
okay.
Okay, how about somebody talk about where we left off and where we need to go?
I have something to say.
Yes.
Okay, so Casey, I was thinking about your children yesterday, driving back and forth to the gym. And I was thinking about what you said, and I've been wondering what my purpose is here, and I realized yesterday, here's my purpose. As I was thinking about classroom size, and I was thinking about what I used to do as an English teacher. And I used to make sure that the kids were reading and writing a lot. These things take time to correct, right? And I kind of, this is just piggybacking on what I said yesterday. Thing is, 18, 20, 23 kids in a class, that's fine. I was listening to some of those averages, and I know there are places in this country, New York City, Iowa, where there's 35 or 40 kids in a classroom. And I can tell you how many papers those kids write. Zero. Because there's no human way to do a quality job and do what you know you need to do in your heart, right? To give kids important feedback on what they're doing. And so that I could sit down with you and you could say, why did I get a C? And, of course I'm going to joke and say, because I like you. But then I'm going to say, okay, thank you. That was a cheap one. But then say, okay, look, your thesis is weak here. I love what you're doing in this paragraph. But this doesn't develop right? So like we can have that one-on-one, we can talk. But I guess what I want to say is like, we have an opportunity here to make a difference. But what we don't want to do is create a situation where we've mandated that classes are so big that kids lose, right? Because I want your kids in class and I want to do a great job for those kids, right? If we're too small, it's hard to do a great job. If you're too big, on the other hand, then you can't do a good job there either, right? So I want to just throw a little bit more teacher perspective there, because I know that economically what we're doing, we have to do something important, right? But we just need to tread carefully on that, because teachers want to do a good job for your kids, right? They want to make a difference. They want to make an impact. So there's another 2 cents, but before.
Oh, you're
Anyway, no,
English teacher, not a math teacher.
right? I know. Did I get this? Was the sum correct?
Are we
Yeah.
just practicing?
Sure, she wasn't listening.
Yeah, anyway, that was all just class size. Let's just
Not too small, not too
be
big.
careful, right?
Yeah.
That's all.
I can't find the numbers that we were discussing.
I have.
Oh,
It was 18, 20, and 22. You were shaking your head. I'm like,
I think we left off with, we had a lot of discussion about sort of the VSA numbers, period, the VSA numbers, APA numbers, some disagreement on some of them. So from my perspective, we need to arrive at agreement, or as close as we're going to get to agreement on the numbers. And then we can delve into the whole exception parts.
Yeah.
What if it's tech ed? What if it's driver's ed? That stuff, but so
Another
we were at kindergarten was 12. These are the VSA numbers. Kindergarten 12, 1 through 5, 15, 6 through 12, 18. But again, those are the VSA numbers.
We talked about a number of concepts. We had a layering concept put on the table. We had, or maybe phase-in, concept.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was more of a check back concept. And then just straight like fight it out over the numbers concept.
Well, and I'll also add, that for a lot of the rural schools, 18 kids in a classroom,
So you
challenge. Go, sorry.
Next.
I just want to share an email that I got from a constituent yesterday afternoon who was watching us online. And he was pointing out to me, he's a school board member, that at his school, which is one of the schools that is unlikely to ever meet that number, the scores are high in most of the classes, that the scores show that the kids are in fact learning within this small school setting. I think like one of our biggest points is that, you know, by making it a little bit bigger, we actually can offer the kids more and they can be successful. And that is a value that I mostly share. But he is wondering, and I think this is worth bringing up, what if you're meeting like 3 out of the 4 quality education standards and the one that you're not meeting is numbers because you're a rural area, but you're showing that you are in fact a successful school. And I just want to make sure that there's a place for that we're considering.
Okay, so once we,
Okay.
kind of hone in on numbers, we'll talk about, those situations.
Okay.
Yeah, don't let's forget.
I won't.
She won't.
I won't.
We won't.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Right.
So
You're
to,
next.
to go back to I keep hearing like the small schools aren't gonna get there. I don't disagree. But we've also talked about, even in the original government proposal, before we talk about, there are gonna be carve-outs, there are gonna be places where we have to make those exceptions for those schools until something, either in perpetuity or until something can be figured out where there can be this, something put in that area that can align to those numbers. So you can still use the larger numbers and have the variance, as I called it, available to those schools until there's a viable option for either of them to meet those numbers, another school becomes available, or it just stays that way, because that's just how it is in a chunk of the Northeast Kingdom that has nothing. Right, I don't know, like, I still think you can still use the larger numbers that'll apply to a large portion of the state, and then those areas that it won't apply to, you can figure that out.
If we go much higher than the BSA numbers, I'm not saying that we hold firm on those, that's open for discussion. The number of schools who will have to line up for that variance is going to be very large.
I don't know if this is possible, but is there a way to consider it in a percentage way? Like if you're from a much less densely populated area, what percentage of less populated are you, and have those numbers adjusted so that like it's appropriate to the scope of your size? Is that making any sense? I'm not really a math person.
To me, that falls in the variance category.
Okay.
So go to the state board and say, you know, we can't possibly meet this because look at where we are and the population around us. I think what you're saying may apply in a way when we start talking about like school size,
Mhm.
to say that the school itself should be representative of the population that is around it.
Yeah, okay.
So that we say a school size minimum of 450 in an area with, in an entire county where there are 350 kids, not gonna quite work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to honor that we also have a large population of our, or a small, I guess it's smaller than the large population of our state that is choosing to go live in the woods and is, you know, this is the culture that they want. So,
I'm gonna throw some numbers out, and these aren't willy-nilly numbers, these come from some of the testimony that we've had. Our homework that was reassigned, in Gordon Narrows is outline of a bunch of studies and ranges in there, and what all I'm saying. The K through 12, I think, or the K class 12, I think is a great number. I think that works well. But then I was thinking the 1 to 3 for 15, and then 4 through 8, 18, and then anything 9 through 12 is 20. And I took those by looking at that testimony and some of the other testimony we've talked about. and trying to come up with some compromising of size and because the 25 was.
Can you read those again?
was
Yeah,
high.
can you say those again?
K was 12, 1 through 3 was 15, 4 through 8 was 18, and 9 through 12 was 20. Again, those are not willy-nilly numbers.
VSA was 12, 15, 18. So not broken out into 4 bands, but
Correct.
3. Yes.
And for me, I'm a little more comfortable with that because when the higher numbers were being talked about for 6 through 12, there's a big difference between a 6th grader and a 12th grader. So having 9 through 12 banded separately than 4 through 8, and I like the 4 bands better than the 3. Just because of developmental reasons for children.
Thinking on my feet, so I'm not sure if I thought this through fully. I wonder if if there could be that would create some additional challenge, particularly in
Probably
small
would.
schools. Where likely you're still gonna have some multi-age, the 2-year bands.
Yeah.
That are probably up through grade 6, where you might be doing a 5, 6, you might be doing a
A
3,
3,
4,
4,
and so
yeah.
if we parse those out. Does it remove some of the flexibility you might need around a 2-year multi-age classroom, but busting those apart? I think up to about 6, grade 6 would be my.
So would you say like 1 to 6, 15? And not necessarily these numbers, but break it out, kindergarten, 1 to 6, 7, 8, 9, 12? Or would you go 7,
I
12?
wonder 7, 8 feels so small. Like,
I know, that's
I'm
why.
more like 7, 12, just because it feels like we're creating a logistical nightmare for on the ground.
Right.
But like, to me, if I worry the more specific we get at smaller grade bands, the more we tie people's
Yeah, I
hands
would
for
agree.
a lot of the flexibility that's gonna be needed.
Or 1 to 4 and 5 to 8,
So if you did
chunks of 4.
6.
Yeah, maybe in chunks of 4. You know, if it was 1 to 4, 15 or whatever, and we come, and then 5 to 8, because a lot of schools structure by 5 to 8, it gives you pairs of grades. And then you've got 4 grades, 4 grades, 4 grades.
But you could even put verbiage in that says. In mixed grade classes, class size would be based on an average of the amount of children in each grade within that class. So, right, like if you have, let's say it's equal, right, you have if you 15 and 18, right, that's,
Yeah.
so you just put verbiage in there that covers that. And then that covers anything, right? That covers any mixed grade classroom, even through through middle school to high school, even without having to set on a different band.
What do people think about 1 to 4, 15, 5 to 8, 18, 9 to 12, 20?
I think I like that
So they're gonna
slightly
1 to 4,
better, just
15.
because it's
12,
in
1
pairs.
to 4, 15, 5 to 8, 18, 9 to 12, 20. And then we're gonna talk about what happens if you can't do it.
Right. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that for this portion of the conversation. I just have a question, and I'm sorry if this throws a monkey wrench. I feel like I apologize for
This-
everything I said.
Yeah,
Stop
yeah,
apologizing.
you are now.
All right.
Yeah, no more.
So there might be a better time to ask this, and maybe we also have not made this decision yet, but what I'm wondering is this gonna also apply to any, private, institutions that we send public funds to for either elementary or high school? Because one of the things I'm really struggling with is that we would tell a public institution that they need to close because they didn't meet this education quality standard, and then send that same money to a school that also doesn't meet it. It's private. So like, is this going to apply to, if you're getting public funds, you have to meet this?
That'd be a discussion.
Yeah, okay. So we have no stance on that yet.
We're not in
Okay.
a discussion.
But it's an important.
All right. Yeah.
It does.
Independent school.
It does say
Right,
that.
right,
Yeah.
so, I mean.
It
so-
says it.
The governor's one
I
does,
would,
but,
yeah, I would have.
it's a
the same
strike all.
Concerns, I appreciate
Yeah.
you raising it.
So-
okay.
Because we
It'll be
could
a
create a
discussion,
perverse
I don't
incentive.
know.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, I'm rich enough to all just send my kids to a different private
I don't
school.
want to lose our enthusiasm.
For numbers.
Let's see if we can put a pin in something. We can agree.
Okay. Everybody comfortable?
Mike Morgan, yeah.
So remind us what we're comfortable with.
We are now comfortable
We can
with
write the changes.
Restate it.
kindergarten 12, 1 to 4, 15, 5 to 8, 18, 9 to 12, 20. Yeah.
So blow it up. I'm not. So Casey already gave me the look. Just kidding. So, okay, so I'm trying to think, right? There was a conversation, I think it was yesterday, we talked about where does middle school start and end. And some middle school started in fifth grade, which is really weird to me. And some started in seventh. Could this be a place where we also make that decision, right? So where's elementary and that's,
And just because,
I don't know. It's
yeah, I just don't think
There's
we can
different
define middle
philosophy in
school,
different
I think-
places, yeah.
because everybody's doing
If
it.
we're
differently.
trying to more standardize things over time, does it become something that gets
The representative makes
layered
a
in,
case.
layered in even? I don't-
I'd say no as a teacher, because it depends on the numbers in the building.
I just thought it might be an easy way to have that conversation.
I say ours, where I taught, because some years I taught 7-8, some years it was 6-7-8, some years it was 5-7-8. Your middle school was determined by the factors on the ground at the time. You know, what
And
the
let's- let's
students,
Not talk about teacher
the
licensure.
numbers, the,
Yeah.
you know.
Twist that.
So what we called our middle school every year, not every year, but would change over time based on things that were happening on the ground.
I'm just
And I
thinking,
think that happens in a lot of schools.
but wouldn't like the long-term outcome of this be kind of trying to more, standardize the grade levels within elementary, middle, and high school over time?
It might be, yeah.
Okay, I think probably the next topic then is what happens if you can't, meet it? So the concept that's out there that we're sort of talking about is making this statute and part of educational quality standards. Educational quality standards, if you don't meet them, it generally is something that the state board deals with. Concept we have been sort of floating is if you don't meet class size minimums for 2 years, and the way, every year superintendents have to basically fill out an attestation sheet that says whether they meet EQS or whatever. So that would be the reporting method. But then you have the opportunity to go before the state board and talk about why it is challenging. That's the time when you say, we don't want to mess with a good thing. We have high mark, we are getting, you know, we can set some parameters that the state board takes into account. Cost effectiveness, geographic isolation, all of that. We can frankly let them develop those rules probably
It's true.
rather than us. Yes.
Is, when I think about like a phrase like education quality standards, I mean, I can see the connection between the right size and how that's an education quality standard. Cost effectiveness, I have a little bit more trouble with. That seems like a tax quality standard.
No, it's, yeah. I was just sort of,
Okay.
as language we could develop.
Yeah,
Unless we wanted to leave it to the state board to come up with the rules
Right.
around this.
I mean, I would like to see a situation in which, so I'm just like, maybe throw the phrase you used.
Achievements.
Yeah. Throw that out, but like, I would like it to be really heavily considered if a school is not meeting the minimum classroom, but can show that nonetheless, their kids are all scoring really high and getting a great education.
Yes,
You know.
Make it less vague than that,
Right.
but yeah, appreciate that.
I would like to be less vague than that too.
I mean, we don't want to be super less vague. We could say the state board shall take into account
Mm-hmm.
student achievement,
Geographic location.
geographic isolation.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Well-
I don't want to say cost effectiveness, but, cost per pupil.
I feel like there needs to be one more thing. The geographic isolation is weighing on me a little bit too, because we have two different types of rural places. One that are completely geographically isolated and one that are just rural, and like people want to have the rural communities, but yeah, they're 20 miles from a bigger town, but
Then that gets into the bigger discussion of small by choice and small by
Yeah.
necessity.
choice, maybe there is still some value for Vermont Choice to remain small towns. And, you know, I don't want to completely override that value. That's just a different set of values.
So just to stay specific again.
Yep.
So if I heard you right, so I guess our decision now that we need to agree on is either we're gonna write in statute exactly what this means, or leave it up to the state board to make that decision, or 3, state board with some guidance from us.
So
Those are our
let
options.
me, first of all, back up just the concept of starting off with it in statute, putting it in EQS, sort of a 2-year glide path to get there before we start talking about state board's role and putting parameters on that. Does that sound, is that a comfortable concept, everybody?
Is that 2-year glide path, the same that the VSA, and they, wasn't theirs 2026?
Oh, no, this is to get the standards in place.
Into-
Yeah, get them into the books in 2026. I don't think they said anything about like how to enforce it.
If you don't need it.
I think your, the glide path might be a little bit of your brain. I think.
Yeah.
EQS in general has
The
a
2-year
2-year.
thing
Yeah.
was
That's an
absolutely
EQS.
on my brain.
They're on a 1 year.
Yeah, they're on a 1-year.
I want to be consistent with how all of EQS works. If it's a 2-year, you don't make it for 2 years, then it shouldn't be
EQS
inconsistent.
is mostly like, or, you know,
Yeah.
What we're doing is a regular.
goals and standards.
And it's
Not,
I mean, that seems to be like.
yes,
I-
Jana,
I was just gonna say,
I think just within the 2 year.
Right, I mean, that's what we're doing.
well, no,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
think I'm on board with the 2-year concept, just because in some of these, smaller school communities, based on, population inflow and outflow, I mean, things could change and the numbers could
Yeah.
sort of shift around. So it feels like some kind of an average over some space of time just enhances like a little bit of predictability around how these decisions kind of play out.
Or if you miss it, 2 years, but you're missing it because you know that incoming class is 20.
Right.
It allows you to sort of not have to make, higher fire. That, I think that's.
Yeah.
the way I was thinking.
Like the
So I'm
bubbles.
gonna go back to advocating for my 2-year rolling average, but whatever you want. to put it.
I had another quick question. I'm thinking about certain classes in any big school.
Yeah.
Where there aren't gonna be 20 kids, like say you get a remedial section.
We're gonna come back. to that.
Okay, good.
Sure.
I thought of that, I was thinking of that yesterday and I just want to make
And
sure.
and I think we
Bubbled
have
up.
some BSA language on that.
About MTSS.
And then we have to talk about the high school records,
Yeah, or like even like
which I don't know, I don't know what the
High end and low.
terminology is.
high end and low end and sometimes have a variety.
There's a disagreement here, I think.
Really disagree. with your comment.
And I live there.
I
And you're
think,
just gonna enjoy it, are you?
I think the reality is just, there's gonna be a 2 plus how many year glide path. It's
Anyway,
just- there's no-
Just
there's-
to make it put it all in place.
There are hopefully going to be more eyes on and sort of attention to how well are we doing in these things and technical support or, hard support and hard decisions if we're not. There isn't like an EQS police that's gonna just go start locking doors, but I'm a little concerned about
I can.
watering down things that educators have said.
And I think the sort
And not
of,
to say that it's easy.
I think you're absolutely, the bureaucratic steps
Is
involved.
going to create a glide path, yeah.
I'm not talking about a 2-year path to having these standards come into being, but we're talking about the period of time that we sort of look at in terms of enforcement, right?
Yes, and I think the argument being made, contrary to what I said, is that the sort of gotta go before the state board thinks about it, state board says something about it, is probably a 1-year process anyway.
I think one of the powerful things, hard, but if this is about some big, hard goals, and one of them is also efficiency and affordability, is that going in effect in 2026 is a really strong signal to the field about their budgeting and planning purposes for FY 27. And like we are always so far behind the information they need and the schedule.
Yeah.
We do budget schedules. And so it's that really clear, I mean, it's happening. So you ripped an article, like it's already from all of our conversations that's happening in the field, but those really clear signals, the further out a school can plan for and budget for, is going to set them up for as much success as possible.
Just doing a quick search, to have like on the ground information. So New York, both New York and Massachusetts use, have a waiver program for these such situations where they don't meet the minimums or maximums. And they basically submit a proposal, say why it is this way and how it will benefit them. And it's one of those things, most of them are usually approved unless it's really outside of some kind of crazy guideline. So I mean, there's two bordering states with us that do it that way.
Have a waiver process.
Right, and it seems like that's the way they go.
There's the super sticky wicket in this, and then the mean lady from the giant district again. We have a statewide education fund and the other states don't. And
Right.
so the choices everyone makes impact everyone. And so that's why, you know, rural by necessity versus rural by choice matters. The amount of, you know, things that my school offers and chooses to invest in matters most to that school, but it matters to all of us, all of our decisions, and we're still gonna have a statewide education fund under a foundation formula, as I understand that finance shift.
Yeah.
And so that's why, as much as I wish, I don't know if I wish, like we have, there's a good reason behind it. It doesn't matter, the courts have decided we have a statewide education fund. And so that's why these things are more linked than.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we actually need to discuss this any further. Since I was advocating for this sort of 2-year thing, I am comfortable with what you've said. I'm comfortable with the slow pace of bureaucracy when it comes to
That's gonna
doing
be
this work.
applied.
So we're back to the July first.
Yep.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
Yep.
Implemented as of 26.
Yep.
For the
And that's in
26,
keeping with the
27
VSA
school year.
recommendation.
Okay.
And so now we are talking waiver process.
Who does it apply to your point?
Can I-
And waiver process, like where the exceptions, yeah. Waiver process and exception, I guess 3 different big things, because exceptions,
Right.
like, it doesn't apply to driver's ed, because you can't put 20 people in a car.
Well, let's do the easy one. Let's do exceptions.
Exception.
That's easy.
I think it's a bit harder.
So I'd say, and, you know, there's some good language, in the VSA about MTSS,
Mhm.
which I think is, you know, kind of a no-brainer, really. That's been a priority of the state all along.
Yeah, there's specific proposals, intervention services pursuant to Act 173 and MTSS are excluded from minimums. Now, I think we also have the Montpelier example where they have fleshed this out quite a bit more. And I feels like the subtext of some of the testimony we've gotten is they've used it to try to steer towards some hard decisions that have some educational reasoning and efficiency behind them. There's some specifics around what's excluded from. These are guidelines, we might want to think about it a little bit differently, but they have some specific exclusions, like CTE, special ed, flexible pathways, supports for ELLs, driver's ed are specifically listed as. I think there's also an interesting concept here at the high school level, because minimums and maximums apply to content areas, individual classes could be smaller, so across your English department, your average needs to be, you know, close to that 20, but you could end up having something bigger, something smaller. Like,
Right.
there's some flexibility
That-
there,
that
because you're
makes
gonna and it shifts in year to year what kids wanna take and what you have
Yes.
people to teach, like, we don't wanna kill electives.
I might,
Maybe we don't need that specificity.
well, I might offer an idea which would sort of maybe get us out of this, and that is because this requires real thought and study. make some language that sort of holds on the 9-12
Placeholder.
minimums until the state board better defines to what classes that minimum applies. All right,
She's saying no.
That's a,
all right. I'm
Hey,
good. All right.
sorry.
So just trying to like converse more about electives, right? Because you don't want to kill the electives. But I do, like, I'll notice from my own area, there are electives that over the last 4 years have had 3 kids and never anymore, right? But a lot of them, you know, so while it's valuable, it like, is that too small, right? Like that's
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
a
there are
lot.
plenty of districts that have policies that say there's not 7 kids.
You're never, you're never, you're never.
I just want, like, that's what I see and I get it. It doesn't bode well for me when I have the conversation, so.
This is where there's work in even our larger schools that are at scale, there
So
will be
even
some challenging
within
decisions.
the exception, some cases, there's gotta be a hard line, right? It's the exception till here and then it's.
Yeah. I don't
I
really understand.
advocated for punting this to somebody else.
No.
So now those of you who disagree with me, which is all of you.
I
don't need
just,
to
I
believe
just
it.
pointed the sheet, disagreed with you. I didn't say this.
This is, I'm gonna now heart this.
Well, I have a question. I guess.
Yeah, in and out, down and out, yeah.
Tap out.
So, but if we're talking about implementing these for the 26-27 school year, that gives us a little time to figure out the exceptions, right? Like,
Well,
not saying, no?
There's no
Because they're gonna
time.
start
They gotta
budgeting
plan,
this.
they gotta hire, they gotta, course offerings have to go out a month before kids.
Let alone everything
scheduling
else
it.
we're gonna have to do.
Which is, of course, catalog's January.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
How about putting in a few, like, I think this is where I'm gonna need help from Ledge Council. We're talking about sort of a dual path here of putting in statute so that things can take effect quickly, but ultimately, if it's going to sit in EQS, those are rules that is a state board process. Shoot. So I was gonna say,
She's shaking her head.
never mind, put it in,
She's
but then
shaking you up.
the details will have to get sort of revised and edited or approved through the state board rules process. But I misunderstand, so.
Well, would you like me to come to the table?
It's always better when you.
Yes.
Careful what you wish for.
Uh,
St. James Office of Legislative Counsel, no, I did not mean to suggest that you were wrong. It is a two-part, which I don't know how you can interpret shaking my head any other way. So, EQS, Education Quality Standards, lives both in statute and. There is the Education Quality Standards Statute, 165, I believe.
Thank you.
And that was the Education Quality Standards Statute, 16 VSA 165 lays out a whole bunch of things, including the process for what happens if a school is not meeting education quality standards.
Stay consistent.
Yes.
Within that statute, subdivision 3 says in order for a school to meet education quality standards, it has to substantially meet rules adopted by the state board regarding conditions, practices, and resources of schools. That's where the rules come in. So then the rules outline the standards regarding conditions, practices, and resources of schools. So you could put something in statute. You could require the state board to update its rule with guidance, or you could put something in statute and have the state board either reflect the statute or provide additional detail or guidance.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, because that last one said.
But it doesn't have to be rule. It can be statute.
But because we are talking about using EQS as a, accountability instrument,
The vehicle.
that's how we go to option 3.
Right, so we did both.
So you could put,
Reflect the statute.
yeah, you could say, so for example, you could have a subdivision that says, so, here, actually, maybe it would be helpful if I shared my screen here. Would that be helpful to you?
Sure.
Making an awful lot of presumptions.
It's radical. You'll get there.
Is it?
Well, for some
It's the day
people,
that ends the line.
Okay.
but maybe not everybody.
Wrong. Yeah. Okay. So here we have education quality standards. This is a statute. It lives in the state board chapter. So in order to carry out Vermont's policy that all children will be afforded educational opportunities that are, say it with me, substantially equal. Each Vermont public school, including each career technical center, shall meet the following education quality standards, right? Nothing about rules yet.
Yeah.
So we don't get to rules until subdivision 3. The school substantially meets standards adopted by the rule of the state board. So there's lots of ways we can do this. Off the cuff, you could put something in 3, right? You could add to this list. The rules have to address those standards, including school leadership, instructional practices, educational materials, access to current technology, and class size minimums. And then you can flesh out class size minimums, say like, for this grade band, it shall be, for this grade band, it shall be, this grade shall be. And then you can say something to the effect of, and shall be subject to the exceptions or whatever framework you want to, label you want to put on it, in state board rules. And then you can provide separate guidance in a piece of session law to the state board on what they have to take into account in their rules. That's just one way to, like, there's other ways, and when I have time to think about that and have more direction from you all, I can come up with a cleaner package or proposal. But there's, that's one way to get at what you are trying to do, where you are putting in the bottom line and then asking the state board to come up with all of the ins and outs that you would need in order to make it operational. And that's a legal perspective, not.
Right,
from a
so just trying to make sure I understand the process. So would you just add an E
You could,
that said class size minimums?
Right.
But you wouldn't have to flesh it out there, but just, because those aren't fleshed out there, any of those.
But we have to flush it out somewhere.
But,
Yeah.
and you would flush it out in the rules or in statute
Whatever you
law
want.
guidance to the rules.
all
Because none of the
policy.
others are fleshed out there.
We would flush it out there. as
And
well.
it doesn't
You
have,
would?
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question.
it doesn't have to live in subdivision 3. You could make a whole new subdivision for class size minimum,
We-
right?
we
That's
would-
what I'm,
Yeah, right. We would flush it out because we've at least selected grade bands and numbers.
And you'd put that there rather than the state board rules.
That is state board rules. Or state board roles. So it would be both in statute and in state board rules.
Okay.
Under the state board roles.
Okay.
Yes.
Man,
So you're saying we can amend this theoretically? So would it be possible to say the school substantially meets the vast majority of standards?
we'll get to that. We're getting there.
Okay.
We're just doing high school classes right now.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead and then, go ahead, Aaron, and then I've got another way to have other people do our work.
I'm going back to the first set of VSA testimony from late January, when they went through with a lot more of the sort of research behind it, and the suggestion there, the policy recommendation was require minimum average class sizes through the EQS and district board policy, which I don't think we've talked about as a mechanism to be implemented by FY 27. The agency of education should approve exceptions based on geographic necessity that should be defined in law, which is getting us back to the work that we've been unable to do.
so that's another way you could do it.
Yeah.
This is all,
I know.
this is truly
Whatever you
all
want.
policy. One of the things I love about having the education portfolio is we are not as hamstrung by federal law than what other states are doing and
Right,
some
yeah.
of my colleagues, right? So it's a lot of room for creativity, but that also means there's a lot of room for you all to make choices.
Yeah. By the looks of it.
So you could put nothing in statute and just direct the state board to make rules. You could put something in statute and then to require the state board rules, comply or do not conflict with. You could put something in statute and then require further guidance in the state board rules. You could put nothing in the state board rules, put something in guidance and require each school district
Yeah.
to come up with their own, which is, so this
Their
EQS does have, I think their class size maximums.
Maximums.
And there is a requirement that each school district have policies related to class sizes. So that is a thing that already exists, but if you're looking for consistency and you're giving every school district the ability to make its own choices, that's fine, that's a policy choice, but you have to live with the consequence of there being very different choices made,
We
right?
are looking for consistency
Yeah.
across the state.
Yeah.
Or you could do 3 layers, right? Statute, state board, and then there
Required
still has
policy.
to be, there still has to be school district policies. How much those can vary would be up to what you do in statute and rule.
There's no, it would be just needlessly duplicative to put in statute class size minimums and then require school districts to adopt
Right.
a class size minimum policy that is the same as what's in statute.
I think that would be a question for the field on whether that's
Right.
needless.
But is their policy just about the size or what they do about it when it happens?
Yeah.
Because the policy might include like, what are we gonna do? We don't have enough, they're gonna go to this school or.
Yeah, so maybe it's better to stay out of policy,
Best.
and let districts take what's in statute or state board rule and figure out their own policies regarding such things as intra-district choice or transfer or whatever. Just as an example, going back to Ripton.
Yeah.
They adopted a class size policy and then said the superintendent, if you can't meet it, the superintendent has the power
You mean-
to assign students to other schools. That would be more of a local choice of
Yes.
how you address it,
Yes,
which I'm kind of okay with,
I am too.
so. Okay, back to this high school issue. I might say perhaps we could ask the BSA for some suggested guidance on that language.
Can I just ask one more question? So is in our menu of options if we put the minimums that we've been discussing in statute, maybe they also live in state board rules, but are we allowed to give fleshing out the exceptions to the state board?
Yes.
Yes, right? That's an
Whatever you
option.
Right.
To like put in what we agree on and let them kind of hash out the exceptions.
Right, that becomes the question, of what guidance we want to give them.
Right.
Okay.
I assume at a minimum, we're gonna hear that we have to receive CPD as an exemption. Maybe not.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah. Probably can't safely have
Right, I
20
think it
kids
varies
in
on the
a
program.
forestry program with chainsaws. All right, one, people,
What else? What else you need?
What
we
we're
gotta
doing,
figure out how we are going to deal with exceptions for the fact that
Right,
certain high school classes cannot exist if you have class size of 20.
right.
I think we let the state school board figure that out.
State Board of Education.
Yeah.
Have them provide guidance on,
Let them figure out how they're gonna handle it if schools don't meet whatever we set as the numbers after 2 years.
yeah, no, I'm thinking, well, I mean, I think in general that works. But the specific issue of high school electives is what I was referring to.
The exceptions.
Gotcha, the exception.
Well, actually, I like the way you said it. You said something like overall, the English department should
I'm
have.
pulling from the Montpelier policy.
Yeah, I thought that
That's sort of,
was.
across the
Because-
content
But that's not really
area.
an exception.
And that covers,
Yeah.
say maybe the low end where you might not have a full class, but it's, kind of remedial, whatever. And it might cover your higher end where maybe you get 16 kids in your AP, fantastic course.
I mean, I think that's a good idea, especially because if you're averaging it out, we already are seeing, and we've heard testimony to the fact that as you get into the 11th and 12th grades, look at everything that's pulling kids now between
Well, yes.
CTE and college, early college, and then like our
Yeah.
You know, APs, like,
Yeah.
so if we want to have in public schools substantial offerings for 11th and 12th grade
Yes.
students, then we need to be able to make those exceptions.
So how do we,
Well, the way the
Should
Montpelier
college
policy
that we were listing
deals with 9 through 12
She can then.
is it says, content area is a group of courses within a specific licensing area, like English, social studies, science, math, etc. Because the minimums and maximums apply to content areas, an individual class could be smaller than minimum or larger than the average applies to the whole
Yeah.
licensing area.
Yes.
Like all social studies, all of English, not
Yes.
your individual English classes.
That actually makes
So
sense.
you might have
so are we-
smaller 12th grade English classes, but you still have
Yeah.
12th grade English classes, even if a bunch of kids have gone to early college.
I worry about some of our other specials, like our band and our chorus.
Well, they have a
They're
different,
listed too.
they
Okay.
actually literally have different. The way Montpelier does this, is
Okay.
they literally have lower minimums
Okay,
for PE and music. We have not entertained that yet. I'm just saying that's a specific,
so like, well, a lot of places you pull the maximum from band.
I know. COVID pretty much killed band.
Yeah.
Flying across the state, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's awful.
But the maximum average is 40, they in band. In
Yeah.
Montpelier, they have
They have
a
40
huge
kids.
maximum.
Yeah, I mean, one.
It's a big, yeah.
Okay, this is pretty highly prescriptive, which is sometimes not our nature,
You're right.
but it's pretty, sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Should we ask legislative council to kind of work some of that?
I don't, which part?
Just the grade band.
Like using some of the Montpelier
Yeah,
language?
yeah.
Just a question, and that's the only high school policy around this that we have to look at.
I don't know.
Right?
Somebody just
And
sent
so-
it to
Yeah,
me.
I
It's
saw
like,
that.
this
That's
might
the
be
only one I've
helpful.
seen.
Yeah.
I'd love
So
to
we
see
I'd
other
like to
ones.
see more
we
than one.
could, maybe Kate could look at U32's,
If you have policy.
policy, we'll see what St. Albans has. It wasn't everybody, maybe we'll just. make
Check
this
your
a weekend
local high
assignment,
schools.
See if you can find a class size policy for high schools. For your high school.
my husband.
I think we all probably looked at it.
No, like we literally.
All right. Let's take
Do you want
10
me to take
minutes
Lake Regional North Country? 'Cause
to,
you've got
just
location
talk
across
about
I don't think he's in.
if
I don't know
you
who they do
can't
it.
make class size
Yeah.
minimums. You can't. That you go before the state board.
I'll check
I'll email
those two.
Oh, and I'm not using go before the state board. Maybe as Josh suggested, it's a letter. Which I think is probably a better starting point.
A petition.
Cause they're gonna.
You may
Application.
petition the state board.
Yeah. That's the question.
Do you want to see what's in current law?
Yeah, that would
Yes,
be great.
please.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
It's not reinvent.
I'll check Dan.
Everybody, we'll stop at 5, we'll take a 5-minute break and then we've got sanitary going again.
All right.
So annually, the secretary determines whether students are provided substantially equal educational opportunities. And if the secretary determines that a school is not meeting education quality standards, I'm right here,
The secretary, not the state board in this case.
Yeah.
we're getting there.
Yeah.
Then the secretary shall describe in writing the actions that a district must take in order to meet the standards and shall provide technical assistance. And then if the school fails to meet the standards or make sufficient progress within 2 years of that determination, then the secretary shall recommend to the state board one or more of the following actions. Continue to provide technical assistance for one more cycle review, so that would, I believe, be 2 years reading this. The state board adjusts SU boundaries or responsibilities of the superintendent. The secretary assume administrative control over an individual school district, or SU, including budgetary control. The state board close a school and require that the district pays tuition, or the state board require 2 or more districts to consolidate their governance structures. I have some questions about that, but this is what's in current law. And then there's a due process piece here. So the state board offering the school board has to offer the school board an opportunity for a hearing. They would either dismiss the secretary's recommendation or order one of those recommendations. And it has to be the least intrusive, consistent with the need to provide students substantially equal educational opportunities. And then they could appeal to their local circuit court.
certainly a multi-year process.
There's your black, which it should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true. And I will point out, that,
so it's really, it's secretary action to start,
Just,
which is frankly probably a little more quick and direct,
yeah,
but without the power to like do something draconian, the secretary has the power to offer help or guide.
yeah, it must not be in this section. Oh, yeah, so you have here, like, there are references to throughout that just say like, if someone is not meeting this standard, then we're referring back to this process. So like, that would be pretty consistent with if you're adding something to EQS, this is the process. You don't have to, you can make something new up.
Like we lost you
I
on
like
the screen.
I know, I took it off so because I thought we wanted
All right, great.
being consistent.
Kate, is that your hand up?
It is, was in and out this afternoon, but I will say that, I'm not in the same place with the numbers that the committee is at. I'm still at the 12, 15, 18 that the VSA and the VSBA, I don't know.
Yeah.
Are at, and I'm fairly certain that, Emily Long is in the same place. I don't think we're gonna get to the numbers, going back to what Leanne was saying. Our 11th and 12th grade is sometimes, like this year at U32, decimated by the fact that we have over 30 kids going to early college. And there's, even at being a relatively big school in this area, we're not gonna get to 20. And I don't even think if you put Montpelier kids into U32, that we would get to 20. Depending on how many kids are headed off to the Career Center, how many are going to early college, and how many are choosing another path like VTVLC.
Would we if we ended our early college program?
Yes. I mean, that's one option. We could also say that you can
You
count
can't-
those
but
as
you
phantom
count
students.
You can count
those
for
are-
purposes of-
Phantom
Yeah.
students do not solve the problems that we are kind of trying to identify though, which is still decimated classes of electives. Phantom students will not help in this unless they can pre-record some Harkness comments. I mean,
Very
I
general,
mean, in terms of
very general statements.
Helps with the numbers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think we might twist ourselves up if we try to solve two problems at once. Like, we could talk about what's fair in terms of applying the minimums we've been talking about. And then like the larger piece that you're raising is definitely how do we fix, bodies in public schools? But I don't know, I feel like tackling those both simultaneously might be tricky.
right.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be flip, like, you're right, the
No,
phantom
no, no.
students would solve if all
No,
we're
you're
looking at is numbers, but
Yeah.
we have got a bigger issue.
Yes.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I don't think we're gonna,
Yeah,
because that has significant implications on the health of our state college system. That's a broader discussion that we're probably not gonna solve.
But I think that's what you were nodding to. Do we sort of add whatever early college so that it is not further exacerbating a problem, not educationally, but the sort of financial and accounting side of things? And then this is a reminder to us, the short list of sticky things swirling around everything that we haven't even begun to start to solve. CTE, pre-K, early college is still there, and then it's not going to.
I might say that, where are we going with this? We could take that when one is unable to meet, and we're talking high school here, meet the class size minimum. Part of the due process or part of the consideration by the secretary has to be, has to include the number of students in non-campus flexible pathways programs.
That is one of the exceptions noted in the Montpelier policy. So it's,
That seems fair. I mean, it doesn't solve the larger
So it wouldn't solve the
problem.
problem, but it at least says,
Seems
allows
fair.
us to say, yeah, we can't meet these because of other states'
Things you've
educational
done.
priorities.
Yeah.
Have these bodies back here, it would meet the.
Yeah.
Is
And,
there-
and I think a high school could easily make the, argument and say, we would like to get there, but we couldn't even get there if one of our neighboring high schools closed. You know, the high school part is very tricky. I think it's gonna have to just sort of, we're gonna have to make it so that, how the number applies sort of in an average as opposed to a per classroom, and then sort of the, petitioning for all of the factors that make hitting those numbers impossible despite one's best efforts. And then if we were to use the state or the policy we just saw, or the procedure we just saw on the screen, there's nothing immediate. Basically, the secretary, i.e. the AOE, works with the school to help them achieve the goal. And then ultimately, if they can't, then it goes before the state board. So it's a fairly gentle process. That was
It's like
me
a,
talking
it's like a
myself
four,
into something.
it's like a 4-year process.
This is a pretty long process.
It's like, because 2 years of not doing it, a year of help.
Yeah.
Then you go before the board.
Yeah.
and
But also, I mean, it's good though, because it gives communities
Yes.
lots of time to
Yes.
think about, like, this is the reality of the situation. What do we want out of the
Plan.
Yeah,
outcome?
and you know, we gotta remember, we are creating new districts with new boards that may be addressing these problems before they happen. I mean, I realize we are talking about class size minimums before that happens. But in the grander scheme of things, this is why we're doing larger districts and more nimble boards, is to be able to address these things.
Right.